My name is Kelly Goen, and this is my final presentation for NRG 155. What can we learn from the Swiss? I'm going to start this discussion with energy use. I'm acquiring this graph from Google Public Data, when the data that they use is from World Bank data. This graph is energy use per capita, so per person. In 2012, energy use in the United States was 6,788.81 kilograms of oil equivalent per person, while in Switzerland it was 3,188.7 kilograms of oil equivalent per person. So as you can see, the average United States citizen uses more than double the energy of the average Swiss citizen. There's not just one reason why the Swiss consume so much less energy than we do here in America, but rather many reasons. I believe one of the biggest contributors has to do with the fact that the United States is huge. We're spread out and often live a good distance from the places we work. Suburbs began rapid development back in the 50s. Switzerland, on the other hand, is quite small. To put it into perspective, I found this overlay showing Switzerland superimposed on Texas. As you can see, it's only about 1.5 times larger than the Dallas-Fort Worth area. According to an article written by Andreas Kaiser for Swiss Info, the growing rate of commuters is being discussed along with ideas of increasing taxes or other costs that might discourage increased commuting. However, Kaiser mentions that although the number of commuters has been rising, the time spent commuting has been stable since 1970, with only 4% traveling more than 60 minutes each day. I don't know about you, but I know a few people that have an hour-long commute and some that have a lot more than that. In fact, Brad Plummer wrote for an article for the Washington Post in which he cites information from the Census Bureau that between 2000 and 2011, approximately 8% of American workers commute 60 minutes or more one way, and between 2 to 3% commute 90 minutes or more. From these statistics, we can see that Americans often have a longer commute than Swiss. So if we take a look at the Swiss transportation sector, I believe that we can see some of the reasons why the energy use in Switzerland is so much less. First, I'd like to point out that the Swiss mass transit far outshines that of the United States. You can get by just fine without having a driver's license in Switzerland, as I personally learned from the manager of the hostel that we stayed at in Lucerne. Trains and buses will get you pretty much anywhere that might be out of range for your bike or your feet to get you. Mentioning bikes, Switzerland is extremely bike-friendly. Most cities have designated bike lanes, and those that don't freely share the roads with bikers. Many people bike to work each day, and of course there's a lot of walking. Swiss people walk, and when compared with American standards, they walk a lot. So what impacts would this have if American people implemented some of these lessons? First and foremost, I believe obesity would be diminished. Americans spend a lot of time sitting, whether it be at their job, in their car, on their commute, and we relax in front of the TV to unwind. Getting out and walking more or biking more would have a dramatic effect on our health and well-being. As for increased mass transit, if the government were to invest in that infrastructure, I believe it would have a positive impact on the people's lives. We could read a book on the way to work in a train. There'd be less traffic. People would have more money in their pockets because they aren't spending the gas to get back and forth where they have to go every day. I believe there would be a lot less stress in people's lives. Granted, there would be a period of getting used to such a change, but I think the long-term improvements would be well worth the investment. Increasing mass transit would also decrease transportation's impact on climate change. Taking that many gas-guzzling automobiles off the road would have a tremendously positive impact. Now, looking outside of mass transit, the choice of car has a direct impact on how sustainable our personal transportation is. I looked at the top selling vehicles for both the United States and Switzerland in 2014. I'd like to say I was surprised by what I found, but that's not really the case. Americans do love their SUVs and trucks. Now, the top 3 vehicles in 2014 in the United States were the Ford F-Series trucks, the Chevy Silverado, and the Dodge Ram 1500 to 3500. Meanwhile, in Switzerland, the top 3 were the Volkswagen Golf, the Skoda Octavia, and the Volkswagen Polo. I just want to put this in comparison. According to the Department of Energy's EPA miles per gallon rating from fueleconomy.gov, the combined city highway mileage for an F-Series Ford pickup was as low as 12 miles per gallon and as high as 19, depending on the specific model. Compare this with the Volkswagen Golf, which, depending on the model, will get you a combined city highway mileage of between 26 to 34 miles per gallon. If the United States' best-selling car is using twice as much gas for the same distance traveled as the best-selling Swiss car, is it really any surprise that the Swiss consume less energy than we do? Further commutes, less fuel efficiency, of course we use more energy. The last thing I wanted to touch on was electric vehicles. Now, based on my own experience, electric vehicles are far more visible in Switzerland. Every now and then I'll see one around here, but it's often the very expensive and out of the average person's budget Tesla. And to see charging stations is quite uncommon. I know they're out there. You can go to plugshare.com and you can find a map of all the public stations. However, in person, I've seen precisely one. That was at Hershey Park. The problem with electric vehicles, though, is still where they're getting their electricity from. On this slide, you'll see the diversity of electricity generation for both the United States and Switzerland. As you can see, nearly 70% of the electricity in the United States comes from conventional thermal, fossil fuels, mainly coal. In Switzerland, only 1.6% come from conventional thermal. Nuclear, hydroelectric, along with the other renewables, presents a far cleaner electricity to be using to power cars. If the United States continues to increase its electricity generation from renewable sources, this would have a huge impact on sustainability, energy use, and the quality of life for American people. And I believe with the increased infrastructure to support electric cars, it wouldn't take long for the American people to embrace that shift. But we must address cleaner electricity generation. Next, I would like to take a look at the food sector and how Switzerland is yet again more sustainable in many ways. One of the big ways that Switzerland is doing it right is with green waste recycling. In many places, there are laws forbidding restaurants and grocery stores from throwing their green waste out with the conventional garbage. They are required to develop contracts with businesses that dispose of their organic wastes, often through biomass facilities. During our trip, I was able to visit such a facility that collects food waste from local grocery stores, restaurants, and local residents. They use this waste to help power their biogas plant and generate electricity and heat for use. A byproduct of this process is a high-quality compost that they provide for free to local residents to return valuable nutrients back to the soils. Switzerland recycles everything possible, and they have high participation due to the way that they handle their garbage. Each municipality will have slightly different rules, but in the Zurich, residents must purchase a Zuri sack from their grocery store, and that is the only bag that can be used for garbage disposal. The more bags you need, the more it's going to cost you. It incentivizes recycling everything that you can so that you aren't paying fees for its disposal. And in Zurich, the green waste is collected and sent to a biogas facility where they produce heat, electricity, and fuel, as well as soil conditioner that can be used for organic fertilizer and peat substitute. Energy generation from food waste is a sustainable way to deal with an otherwise completely wasted resource. Although before we should even be looking at how to solve the food waste problem, we need to discuss how we can avoid food waste in the first place. I found this sign at the Umwelt Arena in Spreitenbach during our trip. The sign is an advertisement from a large grocery chain, Coop, saying that all are welcome with us. In 2013, Coop introduced their own line of fruits and vegetables called Unique to find an outlet for unique pieces that are discarded due to them not measuring up to strict visual guidelines. So much food is wasted due to these standards. This initiative is extremely important to the sustainability of our food supply. When we consider all of the inputs that go into producing this food and that never even makes it to the store to be sold, I believe that we all need to be very aware of this. It's okay if a carrot doesn't look exactly like the carrot we learned from a picture book. This is a point that consumers have to do their part. They have to buy the irregular fruit and vegetables. And hopefully we'll see more grocery stores making these fruits and vegetables available for our purchase. Now, looking at restaurants in Switzerland, I have a few things to mention. First is the fact that vegetarian items are prevalent in most restaurants. Vegetarian diets are more sustainable and, quite honestly, cheaper. Dining out in Switzerland is expensive, but vegetarian options help to lighten the cost a little bit and are more sustainable. Additionally, after you finish your meal, you might have something to take with you. You'll probably be given a piece of foil for your leftovers. While there are many more sustainable options than this, perhaps like wax paper, this is still considerably less waste than we have here in the United States when you're often given a styrofoam clamshell or other plastic containers. The last thing on the subject of food is the fact that I noticed very few buffets. Americans love their buffets. They're everywhere. This is honestly the only one that I noticed while I was there. It's a restaurant called Tibbetts. It's a vegetarian vegan buffet in which you pay by the weight of your plate after you proceed through the buffet. So you're paying for only the food you take. Now on this subject, I found an article written for The Local, which is a Swiss news website, in which the restaurant owner in the canton of Ticino started charging a fee for those that dined at his all-you-can-eat buffet but generated food waste. So the customers are free to pay for the price and eat as much as they wanted. However, should they generate waste by taking more than they could eat, they're charged a fee of 5 francs. I believe this is a really good way to encourage people to waste less. I would love to see similar rules implemented in the American buffets. They generate so much waste. Now at this point, I am just to discuss anything that I believe that the Swiss could learn from the United States in regards to energy and sustainability. But honestly, I've given this a lot of thought and there really isn't much I can come up with that the Swiss aren't already doing. I feel that there's a whole lot more than the United States could learn from the Swiss. And that leads me to this last slide and my takeaway from my experiences in Switzerland. I fell in love with Switzerland and Europe in general during my last trip over 15 years ago, and this trip only reinforced that. There are several things that I bring home with me and I try to keep in my mind to improve my personal sustainability, energy use, and quality of life, all 3 of which I think go hand in hand. Beginning on the top left, this is a photo of the cooperative housing building that we visited in Zurich. Sharing is the big takeaway here. How can we have a very high quality of life with less and more all at the same time? Well, everyone had their personal space. There's so much being shared, space and things. Why not pool your books together and let everyone read them rather than having it sit on your shelf and being read just once? I think it's a sort of development that should definitely be pursued here in the United States. I'd be in line for a space. Moving to the right, the center picture is my open window in the Lucerne hostel. No air conditioning, and you know what? It was okay. Most private residents lack air conditioning, and instead the windows were open. When I got home, I wanted to open the windows. I like the sounds of the outside, the fresh air, and knowing it's okay to sweat a bit. It is summer after all. And less air conditioning translates to lower energy use. In the top right corner, there's a sign Van der Weg, walking path. I did more walking in Switzerland in 12 days than I thought was possible. I walked a lot, and I loved it. It's good for our health to be active. It's a sustainable method of getting around. Why jump in the car to run down the road to grab something at the store? Can I walk? Can I ride my bike? Do I really need to take my car? Now the bottom left is a secondhand store. These are such gems to be found as a visitor in another country. I mean, how much more sustainable is a gift purchased here? There's so many fantastic treasures that can be found in these stores without generating more. It's giving new life to what is already there. It really renewed my excitement for secondhand, and when I got back, I visited local thrift shops for things that I needed before pursuing them new. The last picture on the bottom right is a bakery. I sat outside of here and had coffee and enjoyed watching the locals coming and going on bikes or walking and sometimes driving to the shop. Many tied their dogs outside while they ran inside for their bread. People stopped and had conversations, saying good morning as they passed. When Switzerland can boast of being the most happiest country in the world, it's these little things that we can look at and see why. Who in the United States goes to the bakery in the morning for their bread? Little local shops, conversations with community members. It all ties in. It's a slower pace, less stress, better quality. And there are just so many things that we can learn from the Swiss. Thank you.